Hey guys, what's up? Alan here. It's weird to use my actual name instead of my gamer tag, but I wanted to bring you something new, something more intimate, something less scripted than my other content. So I'll be doing that in the form of my first. I'll be talking about my experiences with different genres across gaming, such as my first first-person shooter, my first MMO, my first open-world RPG, like I'll be discussing today, and that is Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. So I think the story about how I got the game is like as important as my experience with the game. So it was my freshman or sophomore year, and it was the summer. And I was home alone in Jersey all day because my dad was at work. It was just me and him living in a big house. And you'd think that as a teenage boy, I would take advantage of that in a better way. But I didn't. I spent all day in my room playing video games, which I wasn't supposed to be doing. So I guess I was kind of doing stuff I wasn't supposed to do, but it was just really nerdy. And I was alone. Anyway, I was grounded. I wasn't supposed to be playing video games. I don't remember what I did, but I grew up in a strict Spanish household, so it probably wasn't anything extreme. But all of my video games were locked up in my attic. I had 2 Xboxes, it's a story for another time, a PlayStation 2, and a GameCube, and they were all locked up in my attic. And one day I was just like, I had a dresser drawer with my TV on top, and I was looking at it and I was like, if I could put my Xbox in there, cover it with clothes when I'm not using it, and run the wires through the back, no one will know I have it. And of course the Xbox, the actual box for it, will be upstairs, and it'll just look like everything's still packed away. No one will know. And that's exactly what I did. So my father would also leave me money every day, like $10 to $15, to get food at like one of the local restaurants. There was a few up the street, there was a convenience store, and he'd leave me money to go. But what I would do was I would buy sort of stupid things like the biggest bag of chips at the store, or I don't know, just some stupid snack that was cheap that held me over till dinner, till he got home. And I would just stash all the money away. And then I would take my bike, because I was too young to drive still, and ride 45 minutes to the closest Game Crazy, which I don't even know if those still exist, but we had one, and just raid the used games bin. And one day it was between Elder Scrolls 3 and another game, and I don't remember what the other game was. I had seen a feature for it or a spread in Game Informer not too long before that, and I was curious. I had grown up in the 90s with PlayStation. I played older consoles as I grew up. I was very lucky to be exposed to that. I had older cousins who had, you know, the Genesis, the Saturn, even as far back as like an Atari 2600 in the closet that I got to play. My friends all had Dreamcasts and N64s, but I didn't have a console till PlayStation 1. And so I mainly grew up in the 90s playing Ape Escape and Spyro and Crash Bandicoot and Jersey Devil and and Gex the Gecko. Oh my god, I missed that game. A bunch of platformers. Very linear experiences, and you know, they might have had larger levels, but it was always linear. It wasn't anything crazy. There wasn't much that I could do in terms of side missions or anything. Or I wasn't familiar with this go anywhere, do whatever you want sort of gameplay style. So this open world game stood out to me, and I was really curious, and I'm so glad that that's what I chose, because it was my first experience with them. And I remember for the first time like stealing everything that wasn't nailed down in like Satanin after the Imperials sort of process you and then let you go. And I remember I would just go on this like robbery spree from Satanin to Vivec, which was the largest city in the game. And the Dark Elves who live in Morrowind, they have 3 noble houses. And these 3 noble houses all have bank vaults. So what I would do was, and this is how I got like OP characters in a matter of hours, I would sneak into all the vaults, which basically meant goading all the guards into attacking me so that I could kill them. And in Elder Scrolls 3, it was sort of a speechcraft check. Basically, you could goad them into attacking you, and it would be a one-on-one thing, and if you won and killed them, you weren't punished for it. So no more guards would be called on you, and it was fair game. So I would do that to each guard, and then sneak into the vault, steal everything, keep certain things for myself, but then I would just fence everything. I would just sell it to all the vendors across Morrowind, and there was a mud crab in the game for some reason who had more money than everybody else. So I would just go to him and I would sell as much stuff as I could. And basically, I'd have all the gold in the world. Like, I'd have tons of gold. And another cool feature that they sadly took out of Elder Scrolls games after that was that you could train an unlimited amount of time. So if you had all the gold in the world, you just went to whatever trainer you wanted to train in, whether it was destruction magic or one- or two-handed combat, and you just trained with them until your stats were insane, as long as you had the gold. And that's what I would do. So in a matter of like 6 hours, I had a character that looked like I had been playing for 6 weeks. And it was really, really cool. And it's sadly something you can't do in any of the new Elder Scrolls games, but this was my first brush with it. And I had this like headcanon that like all my characters were related somehow. And I still do that with a lot of my games, actually. And it was just so much fun. It was my first experience with emergent gameplay. And I had experienced so many linear games that were fun and that were, you know, engaging and that I loved. And even now, like in the modern day, we have so many games that are so well crafted and that are linear, but the experiences are so beautiful. Like God of War, for example. And there are side missions to that and things you can do, but overall the experience is quite linear, even though some of the levels are a little bit more open-ended, especially compared to something like Skyrim. And those are great. Those experiences are wonderful, and they're beautifully crafted for the player. But there's nothing like the stories that you write for yourself. There's nothing like the stories that you tell for yourself. Emergent gameplay is basically writing in between the lines, and it's great. And I really appreciated that first experience of like getting to create these characters my own way. It was sort of breaking the way that was intended. Even, you know, like player homes, for example, those are all made for you now. You have wonderful player home mods that are available across console and PC in games like Skyrim. You even have DLC packs like Hearthfire where you can buy a player home. But there's nothing like, God, and this sounds really morbid, in Morrowind, if you wanted a player home, you had to find a home, kill whoever lived there, shove them in a broom closet somewhere, and then decorate the place yourself. But there was nothing like, I remember going around and collecting clutter, like useless items like skulls or candles, and sort of making the place my own. Just creating like this evil lair for my character and displaying my armor. And this is before there were armor racks, weapon racks, you know, all these things to facilitate this kind of gameplay. You had to make it for yourself. You sort of had to find a way. And by the end, I had this badass lair, and I had all this armor on display. Everything was glowing red with all these candles, and I just had to pray that the space didn't reset, and that I could keep all my stuff. And it was just this great experience. I'll never forget how that felt, and sort of the adventure that I went on to get the game so that I could have that adventure. It's always one of my fondest memories. And because of that, I got into games like Oblivion after it, and then Skyrim now. And as someone who wants to get into game design, I mean, I've worked on mods for Skyrim. That first lesson of the importance of emergent gameplay and like letting the player tell stories it's invaluable. It was an amazing lesson to learn. And yeah, that was my first open world RPG.